Again, you have learned to surrender in some situations, but you have not yet learned to surrender in all. We must take what you do in some and extend it to all. This will take great commitment on your part, for the ego is willing for anything except surrender. We talked about this morning as well, because again, we started NTI 1 Corinthians, and that really is about complete surrender. And I mentioned also that when Inna Ramana came and started talking to me, the very first thing Inna Ramana talked to me about is surrender. And some of my friends, some of the people that had been around for a couple of years, actually became very upset when Inna Ramana started talking about surrender, because Inna Ramana was, they're just very direct about surrender. There was no hem-hawing around. And a lot of my friends became, a few of my friends became upset. Literally I would hear things like, Holy Spirit would not ask you to surrender. Just like, that's just not true. That's not it. And that reaction is actually coming from the ego part of our split mind. Notice what Holy Spirit is saying. Ego is willing for anything except surrender. So that's the one thing that ego least wants us to do. And in fact, that's why ego wants us to think we understand the problem and think that we can figure out the answer. Ego wants us to stay the independent thinker. Because if we do not stay the independent thinker, there is no ego. You understand? That's the end of ego. This is why ego does not want us to surrender. So, it does seem to take a great commitment, a full focus on our true desire. If we want to lay down being the one who thinks we know and understand what we see and thinks we know what to do about it, and get to a point where we are always asking. Inna Ramana taught that we should always ask, how am I to see this? What am I to think? What am I to do? What am I to say? Again, do you see how it's just like a puppet? If Holy Spirit doesn't pull my strings, I cannot move. And this is really what we are asked to eventually get to this point. Jesus called it learning to listen to only one voice. And he also says in A Course in Miracles, that's the last thing he learned to do. So he's not claiming that he was an expert at this early on. He seems to be claiming that as he continued his teaching and as he continued his moving on through life and his gaining of clarity, he himself was still learning the perfect surrender. So Holy Spirit says it will take great commitment on our part. And what that really means is we need to continue to, try to get better at it. Continue to notice when we are not surrendered, and then continue to give our willingness to be surrendered there too. And without judgment, but again, back to awareness. Just being aware of where we have made our errors, aware of where we forgot to ask, aware of where we jumped in and thought we knew. And as we become more aware of this, with our true desire and focus, we will just start naturally changing our mind. And we will start naturally surrendering more, because that is what our true desire wants. Okay, so Holy Spirit continues. I ask you to watch the ideas in your mind and where they come from. Many of the ideas seem helpful on the surface. You are sharing useful information, and others are finding it useful. There is nothing wrong with that. Yet, listen to this sentence. One can become addicted to the spiritual path. I once told you that this path you have chosen is the highest of all paths in the world. However, it is in the world. In order to awaken, you must choose to step off of this path with me. And actually, he's told me that in NTI. That shows up in NTI Luke. He continues, the ego wants you on the spiritual path. The spiritual path is a type of trying, seeking, discovering, and sharing with others, all of which are actions in the world. It is not a path of knowing and being, because knowing and being cannot be found in action. Action may seem to be accomplished through one who is the embodiment of knowing and being, but that one is not acting. That one is following. Being is following, because following is joined, and joined is a part of the process of creation. Creation is never separate. It is a part of and in full inclusion with. It is following, because following is never independent. Therefore, you prepare yourself for the pure act of creation by following one voice within the world now.